At UNICEF Malawi, I'm the chief of HIV and AIDS. So you might be wondering, well, what's a public health specialist doing talking about drones? I've been working in the field of HIV and public health in Africa since 1992. Somebody told me earlier that was before he was born. It was a wake-up moment. So I'm going to talk a bit about delivering samples for HIV testing and diagnosis in Malawi, what we've done in terms of building national systems, and then I'm going to veer off topic. Apologies, Andrew and the robotics team, to talk not just about cargo delivery, but other drone uses as well. So Patrick earlier this morning talked about use cases, that the work that the Flying Labs is doing is driven by use case, not by technology, and certainly that's what happened with me. I was on an airplane reading an in-flight magazine about a story, drones delivering pizza in Mumbai. Now, I've been to Mumbai, and I thought that was brilliant. It's very difficult to get around. But as I said, I've been working in HIV since 1992. And in Malawi, 10% of the population, the adult population, is HIV positive. The epidemic there is 30 years old. We know that 50% of children who are HIV positive will die before their second birthday if they're not on treatment. In Malawi, that's 70 children every week. That's a school bus full of children dying every week. It's a lot of kids. Key to saving those lives are getting children diagnosed early and started on treatment. Currently, the turnaround time in Malawi from getting a lab sample taken from a child to one of the labs is 2 to 3 weeks. And on here, all these little dots are health facilities. There are over 600 facilities in this small, narrow country that are drawing blood samples for children. These are dried blood spots, so they're not live blood. They're taken onto a piece of card paper, and it's basically dead blood. That's then taken for DNA testing. However, there are only 8 labs. Those are in the green. So if you're one of these health facilities close to one of the labs, that's good luck. But if you're, say, over here, these health facilities, which really should be part of Mozambique, but they're not, then you have to go all the way down here to Zumba, or all the way up here around the lake. Or if you're here in these islands, you can only go by boat. Or up here on the lakeshore, there are no roads. So those facilities are also only accessible by boat. So we have inaccessible facilities, a poor road system, although after hearing Peru's story, maybe not so poor, but still challenging. And high cost of transport. It costs up to $2 million a year, which is a lot of money for a country like Malawi to transport just HIV samples. Okay, now I'm going to summarize 12 months of work into one slide. Once we began thinking about using drones to transport these laboratory samples, these small dried blood spots that weigh about 100 grams each by drones, we had to seek government approval. And at that time, drones had not been used in Malawi. We met with about 10 different government ministries, from civil aviation to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Home Affairs, Ministry of Information, Ministry of Local Government, of Transport, and so forth, and finally Ministry of Defense to get approval. And what was key for that whole process is, as I mentioned, HIV is a real issue in Malawi. There's not a single household that hasn't been affected by the epidemic. So throughout the process, we got nothing but unqualified support. It just took time. We then did a competitive tender, so I'm anticipating my UNDP colleague question, in order to sign a contract with a company that would then do what was basically a feasibility study. And then we carried out an extensive public information campaign. As earlier colleagues have mentioned, having people within the communities where we were planning to fly understand what we were doing and why we were doing was critical to moving forward. In addition, at the public information campaigns, we used that as an opportunity to talk about the use case. So everywhere we went, whether it was marketplaces or schools, we offered HIV testing and counseling alongside the public information. We also held community demonstration days in the areas where we were flying, so to give communities an opportunity to, again, learn about the study and to understand the issues and to see drones actually in flight. The work itself was in the Lilongwe, the capital of Malawi, and entailed flying about 93 beyond line of sight autonomous flights over 2 weeks between this Area 25 Health Center to the Lilongwe. It wasn't quite a straight route because along the way there are embassies, and we had to ensure that we didn't fly over any foreign embassies or other government buildings. It's a very high, densely populated environment. As I noted, it's urban. It happens to be one of few controlled airspaces, so choosing it was perhaps not the smartest thing at the time, but it worked. And we chose the time after the rainy season, where the weather was generally favorable, although with some variation, and most of the flights were around 10 kilometers. We established a halfway point around here, so at 5 kilometers, just in case something were to happen, that we could have an earlier landing. And we carried out some test flights to see if that would work. And throughout the 2 weeks, there were no adverse effects. We also looked at the cost. As I mentioned, it costs about $2 million to use the motorbike system. We wanted to see, would it be favorable to now integrate drones into the mix? And that was challenging to do that analysis. We used different scenarios, hub and spoke, loops, different payload capacities, and the conclusion was this is really still an evolving field and requires an optimized network. So the next step is phase 2, where we are piloting an optimized diagnostic supply chain. And that will integrate motorbikes, which is the current transportation system, drones, which we're able to demonstrate the feasibility of using, and also, importantly, point-of-care diagnostics. Drones are not the only new technology, and it's exciting to see in the field of medicine diagnostics emerging that can give same-day HIV test results to children at the point of service delivery. And this will include HIV diagnostics, viral load, as well as TB. And you'll see most likely one of the districts that will be chosen here are the islands that I mentioned that are only accessible by boat, health facilities only accessible by boat, traveling to one of the central labs. Okay, so that's the work around the supply chain system. At the same time, as UNICEF, it's important for us to build the national capacity to strengthen national systems. So throughout the process, we were also working with Civil Aviation, Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Health, and Ministry of Justice to engage in regional learning in order to develop Malawi's own UAV regulatory frameworks. So that's now in place. Malawi has regulations specifically for drones. We also supported a team from Civil Aviation, Defense, and Ministry of Health to become licensed drone pilots and to be trained as drone inspectors. When we first carried out the study, we had the aviation specialists inspecting drones, but they knew less than the company that had come in. We want them to know more. And at this point, we're now engaged in South-South support, where the government of Malawi is providing support to other countries who are interested in starting up drone programs, as well as supporting ICAO in developing standards for countries using drones. So it's exciting to see how the government over the course of the year has really taken this program on board and made it their own. I'm going to talk very quickly about disaster. This is a photo from the floods that occurred in 2015, where over 100,000 people were displaced due to massive flooding. And the only way to assess damage or to deliver supplies, you see communities completely cut off by these flooded rivers, was by light aircraft. Malawi has 2 functioning helicopters and maybe 5 boats that belong to the government for this type of work. Search and rescue did not happen, and all of this was very expensive and very late. In 2017, the government actually came to UNICEF and asked us to deploy drones. So again, exciting to have government in the lead, and we were able to put together contracts within 48 hours in order to reach communities that have been affected by floods. And in this photo, and this is really where I want to thank Flying Labs for inspiring us, we have community members looking at a live feed. So while the drone is flying overhead, they're identifying, that's my house. That was very exciting. As a follow-on, we're working with the government through the Vice President's office to integrate drones into the National Disaster Response Framework so that it becomes institutionalized. It's part of what the response will entail in future disasters. It's not just about disasters, it's also about knowing that, as my former boss used to say in Malawi, it rains every year. We know it's going to rain, and it usually floods. We just don't know the extent. So now we're working with universities as well as partners like FAO to do risk mapping and look at developing flood models of river catchment areas. And again, engaging in communities using both drones as well as mobile phone platforms as surveillance agents to understand river flows and rainfall intensity and to set up early warning systems so we can anticipate when floods are going to happen. We're also very intrigued by this article around water resource management at catchment areas. Malawi suffers from deforestation, very erratic rainfall, and currently a drought that's affecting the entire population, with 33% of the population in need of food aid. So looking at how drones can be used to assess catchment areas and identify near ground surface water levels in order to make better use of borehole drilling and water point siting. Finally, drone corridor. In November of 2016, we launched Malawi's first drone corridor for humanitarian, Africa's first drone corridor for humanitarian purposes. That is really to create space for testing new technologies and use cases. And this is a photo of what it looks like. It's an old water drone and a 40-kilometer radius, 80-kilometer diameter, so it includes different schools, health facilities, etc. And there'll be an opportunity for companies to conduct tests on imagery, connectivity, as well as cargo delivery. And the first use cases are scheduled to happen at the end of June. I think that's my 7 minutes. So I wanted to end with an acknowledgement to the many government bodies that have been engaged in supporting this effort. And thank you.